You think decluttering is just about throwing things away? No, it's about confronting the weight of your past, the story of your life written in objects, and the unbearable realization that time is moving forward whether you like it or not. Now, people will tell you it's easy. Just let go of what you don't need, donate it, toss it, move on. But that's naive. The process of decluttering in your later years is not just a physical act, it's a psychological reckoning, and there are 5 brutal truths about it that no one wants to tell you. But you need to know them. Every item you own is more than just an object. It's a symbol, a piece of your personal history, a tangible representation of experiences, memories, and even aspects of your identity. When you look around your home, you don't just see furniture, clothes, or keepsakes. You see the story of your life reflected in these objects. And that's why decluttering in your later years isn't just about deciding what to keep and what to throw away. It's about facing the reality that certain chapters of your life are closing. And that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. Think about the possessions you've accumulated over decades. The books on the shelf might remind you of the knowledge you once sought, the person you were when you first read them. The tools in the garage might tell the story of the projects you built, the things you fixed, the sense of confidence you once had. That old suit or dress you haven't worn in years might be tied to an important event, a wedding, a promotion, a celebration of who you were at that time. These objects don't just take up space, they hold emotional weight. The struggle with decluttering is not just about physical belongings, it's about identity. When you discard an object, you are in a way admitting that part of your life is over. And that's terrifying. It's not just the item you're letting go of, it's the role you played, the version of yourself that once needed that object. If you spent your life as a professional, getting rid of old work materials can feel like saying goodbye to that part of yourself. If you were an artist, parting with old canvases or supplies may feel like an admission that your creative days are behind you. Even letting go of something as simple as a set of dishes can bring up unexpected emotions. Memories of family meals, gatherings, a home that was once full of laughter and conversation. This is why so many people avoid decluttering. It's not just about making decisions about what stays and what goes. It's about confronting time itself. It's about acknowledging that the life you built, the experiences you lived, are not static. They evolve, they change, and some things inevitably fade. But what many people don't realize is that holding on to everything doesn't stop time from moving forward. It only creates unnecessary burden, both physically and emotionally. The key to navigating this process is understanding that your identity is not tied to your possessions. You are not your old books, your worn-out clothes, or the souvenirs from trips taken decades ago. You are the person who experienced those moments. And that will never change, no matter what you decide to keep or discard. Your value, your wisdom, your memories, all of that exists within you, not in the objects around you. When you let go of clutter, you are not losing pieces of yourself. You are making space for the next chapter of your life to unfold with clarity and intention. Letting go of possessions isn't just a matter of deciding what you no longer need. It's an emotional battle, one that often comes with an overwhelming sense of guilt. Every item you consider discarding carries a story, some joyful, some painful, but all significant in their own way. And when you pick up an old gift, a letter, or a treasured heirloom, it's not just an object in your hands. It's a connection to someone, a reminder of a promise, a symbol of a relationship that mattered. The idea of discarding it can feel like a betrayal, as if by letting go of the object, you're letting go of the person or the memory itself. This is why so many people struggle to declutter, especially in later years. There's a deep fear that by removing something from your space, you're erasing a piece of history. A gift from a deceased loved one isn't just an item. It's proof that they were once here, that they cared for you. A collection of birthday cards, even ones decades old, reminds you of the people who once celebrated you, who took the time to acknowledge your presence in their lives. Letting go of these things can feel like an act of forgetting, as if you are dismissing the importance of those relationships. But the truth is, keeping an object does not bring the past back. It does not keep a person alive. It does not preserve a moment in time. Guilt also comes in another form, the feeling that getting rid of something is wasteful or disrespectful. You might look at an expensive coat you never wore and feel guilty that you didn't use it enough. Or maybe you were raised to believe that throwing things away is irresponsible, that everything has value, and that discarding something is an insult to the resources that went into creating it. But what many people don't realize is that keeping something out of guilt doesn't add value to it. An object sitting unused in your home does not honor its purpose. It only takes up space and weighs on your mind. Another painful source of guilt comes from the idea that you might regret your decision later. You might think, what if I need this someday? What if I get rid of it and then suddenly wish I had it back? This fear of regret can be paralyzing, making it nearly impossible to part with anything. But the reality is that most of the things we cling to out of fear rarely serve us in the future. If something has been untouched for years, the chances of truly needing it again are slim. And even if you do, there are always ways to adapt, replace, or move forward without it. The key to overcoming guilt in decluttering is understanding that memories, love, and respect are not stored in objects. They are stored in you. The impact people have on your life is not diminished by letting go of the things they left behind. By releasing unnecessary possessions, you are not discarding your past. You are making room for your present and allowing yourself to live with greater freedom and peace. One of the most painful realizations when decluttering later in life is that the things you carefully saved, hoping to pass down to your children or grandchildren, may not be wanted. For decades, you might have held on to heirlooms, furniture, books, or collectibles, believing that one day they would find a place in the next generation's home. But when that moment comes, you may be met with indifference or even outright refusal. The younger generation doesn't always share the same attachment to objects, and this can feel like a personal rejection. It's important to understand that this is not a reflection of your worth or the significance of your memories. Times change, and so do tastes, lifestyles, and values. Many younger people today prefer minimalism over sentimentality. They live in smaller spaces, move more frequently, and often choose functionality over nostalgia. The heavy oak dining table that was once the heart of family gatherings may be seen as an impractical burden. The collection of china you treasured might be considered outdated or too fragile for modern living. Even the photo albums carefully arranged over the years may not hold the same meaning for those who grew up in a digital world, where memories are stored on screens rather than in scrapbooks. This can be a deeply emotional experience. It might feel as though your history, your traditions, and even your identity are being dismissed. After all, these items are more than just things. They represent your life, your achievements, and your relationships. But clinging to the belief that your possessions must be cherished by the next generation can lead to unnecessary disappointment and frustration. The reality is that the true inheritance you leave behind is not in objects, but in the lessons you've taught, the love you've shared, and the wisdom you've imparted. Instead of holding on to things out of the hope that someone will want them later, consider having honest conversations with your family now. Ask what they truly value and be prepared for answers that may surprise you. In many cases, what they cherish most isn't furniture or jewelry, but simple things: handwritten letters, stories about their ancestors, or even a particular recipe that reminds them of home. Memories and connections are more meaningful than any physical object. If certain items are unwanted, don't let that stop you from giving them a second life elsewhere. Many things can be donated, sold, or repurposed by someone who will genuinely appreciate them. It's far better to release them into the world where they can be used and loved, rather than keeping them stored away out of obligation. Holding on to possessions that no one wants does not make them more valuable. It only adds to your emotional and physical burden. Letting go of the expectation that your family will treasure everything you leave behind is freeing. It allows you to focus on what truly matters: your relationships, your well-being, and the legacy you create through the way you live, rather than the things you own. Your value is not in your belongings. It is in the impact you have on the people around you. The more you own, the harder life becomes. This is a truth that often goes unnoticed until the burden of possessions starts interfering with daily living. What once felt like a source of comfort, having everything you might need within reach, eventually turns into an obstacle, both physically and mentally. The weight of clutter doesn't just take up space in your home, it takes up space in your mind. Every drawer filled with old papers, every closet packed with unused clothes, every shelf stacked with forgotten trinkets, all of it demands attention, even if only in the background. Over time, that accumulation leads to stress, exhaustion, and a sense of being trapped. A cluttered home makes even the simplest tasks more difficult. Looking for an important document becomes a frustrating search through piles of papers. Moving through a crowded hallway means carefully navigating around things that no longer serve a purpose. Cleaning takes longer, as every surface is covered with things that need to be dusted, moved, or organized. What was once a space of comfort can start to feel like a burden, creating a constant sense of overwhelm. As people age, physical limitations also come into play. Bending down to reach the lower shelves, climbing a ladder to get something from storage, or simply maneuvering around furniture that no longer fits the space can become increasingly difficult. What once felt like sentimental treasures can slowly become hazards. Piles of books become tripping risks. Stacks of old newspapers gather dust, and worse, allergens. A home that was once filled with memories begins to feel like an obstacle course, and when movement becomes restricted, independence starts to fade. But the weight of clutter is not just physical, it's psychological. Every item carries a decision. Should it stay? Should it go? What if it's needed someday? The mental load of constantly making these choices leads to decision fatigue, a sense of being overwhelmed by too many options. When the environment is cluttered, so is the mind. Studies have shown that excess clutter can increase anxiety, reduce focus, and even contribute to feelings of depression. A chaotic space makes it difficult to feel at peace. The brain craves order, and when it's surrounded by too much stuff, it struggles to find clarity. Letting go of unnecessary belongings is not just about tidying up, it's about reclaiming space, both physically and mentally. A home with fewer things is easier to navigate, easier to clean, and easier to enjoy. The air feels lighter, the mind feels clearer, and life becomes simpler. The idea that holding on to things provides security is an illusion. True security comes from the ability to move freely, to live without unnecessary burdens, and to focus on what truly matters. Decluttering is not about loss. It's about creating an environment that supports well-being, peace of mind, and a life that is easier to manage. The fewer things you have weighing you down, the more freedom you gain in return. Decluttering is often seen as a one-time event, something you do when you finally have the time or energy to sort through everything you've accumulated over the years. But the truth is, it's not a single project. It's an ongoing process, one that requires constant decision-making and maintenance. The idea that you can declutter once and be done with it is an illusion, especially in a world where new things continue to enter your life, whether you intend them to or not. The reality is that if you don't actively manage what comes into your home, the clutter will return, sometimes even faster than before. One of the main reasons people struggle with maintaining a clutter-free space is that they focus only on removing things without addressing the habits that led to the accumulation in the first place. Even if you clear out an entire room, it won't stay that way unless you change the way you interact with possessions moving forward. This means being intentional about what you bring into your life and questioning whether something truly adds value before acquiring it. It also means setting boundaries, not just with yourself, but sometimes with others who continue to give you things you don't need. Another difficult truth is that decluttering is emotionally exhausting, and that exhaustion doesn't disappear just because you've finished cleaning out a space. Sorting through a lifetime of belongings forces you to confront memories, past decisions, and even regrets. It's mentally taxing to repeatedly ask yourself whether something should stay or go. And for many people, that fatigue leads to avoidance. This is why clutter builds up again, because dealing with it requires a level of emotional energy that people aren't always prepared to give. The only way to make it sustainable is to integrate it into your routine rather than waiting until things pile up to an overwhelming degree. Many people also underestimate just how much time it takes to truly declutter in a meaningful way. It's not just about taking a few hours on a weekend to clean out a closet. If you've spent decades accumulating possessions, it's going to take time to go through them properly. Rushing the process often leads to regret, either from discarding things too hastily or from keeping too much because you didn't have the mental clarity to make the right decisions. Accepting that decluttering is a long-term process allows you to approach it with more patience, making decisions with intention rather than urgency. The final challenge is accepting that even after you've decluttered, you will have to continue making decisions about your space for the rest of your life. There is no perfect endpoint where everything is settled forever. Instead of seeing decluttering as a finish line, it's better to see it as a way of living, one where you are constantly evaluating what truly matters, letting go of what doesn't, and creating an environment that supports the life you want to live. The freedom that comes from a clutter-free space isn't a one-time reward. It's something that must be maintained day by day, choice by choice.